In the middle of the night, we see a woman sitting by a campfire. We can see she's shivering and she's got a lot of the undead blood on her face. She then hears something from the woods that spooks her. She hears the sound of footsteps in the woods. As she starts to panic, she looks scared for her life. She quickly puts out the fire and hides inside of a bush. We then see 6 men step out of the woods in a pack. They notice the campfire is still smoking, and we see none of these men are talking. One of them points forward, and they all follow as they keep walking. From what we can tell, they're trying to find this woman. Once these men start walking towards the bushes, she then starts running away before they see her. As we see her running through the woods, one of these men see her running from a distance and points at the other 5 men, and they all pull out their knives and start chasing after her. She keeps running as fast as she can, but then she falls into a river filled with blood and dead corpses. She has no choice but to stay under the water covered in the undead blood. But as she's trying to stay hidden from these men, one of the dead corpses inside the river turns and attacks her from under the water. As she's struggling with it, she uses one of the bones that's in the water from one of the corpses and uses it to stab it in the head. But then, as she's crawling out of the river, we see the men are coming. So she quickly plays dead and lays there with the rest of the dead bodies as the men just pass her by. Once these men are gone, she slowly gets up and starts breathing heavily in a panic. As she is then covered in blood, we then see it's starting to rain. As she sees her chance, she then runs the opposite direction for where the men went, and she starts running away as fast as she can in order to get away from these men. 3 hours later. It's still raining, but as we see, this woman is walking the roads with nothing. No food, no water, no weapons, or anywhere to go. She finds an old truck on the side of the road, but we see this woman is so scared that she even looks afraid to even approach the truck. But as she slowly walks towards it, she opens up the door ever slowly. We see her get in and close the door. We see she's shaking from fear and being out in the rain. She then sees it has a quarter of a tank of gas left. She starts driving super fast down the road, trying to get as far out of danger as possible. As she's driving, we see her crying her eyes out and beating on the dash, screaming, "No." But after a few seconds of driving, the truck then gives out on her. She's saying, "No, no, 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 no." She then looks scared and says, "Lord, please, show me a sign, please, anything. Lord, 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 please, show me the way. Show me a sign, please, please." And she then steps out of the truck and starts walking down the road once again. We see it's now the next night. We see she's been walking through the woods all day and she looks tired and dehydrated. But as she then finally drops to her knees, she lets out a big scream and she starts to break down. As she keeps crying, she tells herself, okay, you aren't dead yet. You aren't dead." A man then comes out of the woods and knocks her to the ground. The woman is on the ground and is panicking. As the man walks up to her, he pulls out a knife as she tries to ask, "Please, tell me what you did to my friends." But the man doesn't say anything. And the woman looks scared and is shaking and says, "Say something. Please. Please." But then he is shot in the throat. As blood starts pouring out of his neck, the man falls to his death. But as the girl turns around, we see who did this. There we see Sydney with a fully loaded shotgun. As we see the smoke still coming out of the gun, she puts it over her shoulder, and the woman looks scared and asks, "Are you here to kill me?" Sydney laughs at this and says, "Why do people always expect the worst? You look like shit. I'm Sydney Roy. And, who might you be?" We see a post-apocalyptic bus yard. We see a motorcycle and an old pickup truck parked to the side. As we cut to Lincoln, Tom, and Kezia sitting around a campfire. We see they're eating some squirrels, and Tom says, "Ugh, I always get the ass end." Lincoln says, "Did not." Tom says, "Look, that is a squirrel's ass." Kezia says, "Oh my god, you two. Oh, by the way," as she pulls out a bottle of liquor. "Found this in the back of one of the buses." Tom says, "Damn. I got my liquor, I got some rotten ass. Just when I thought life was falling right into place, I get some ass juice in my mouth." Kezia rolls her eyes and says, "Jesus Christ, Sydney. Why do you gotta leave me with all these boys?" Kezia gets up and says, "Gonna check the snares." As we see her walk off, we then hear the sound of a dog barking. We then see a small little black lab run up to Tom with a stick, and Tom says, "Oh, good boy." Lincoln says, "Damn, he's all pumped up tonight." Tom says, "No shit. I found him running around with an old pair of my underwear last week." Lincoln says, "You've had this little guy for a few weeks now. He got a name yet?" Tom says, "Not yet. Hopefully one day he'll be able to take down deadheads all by himself." Lincoln says, "Shit, that'd be useful." Tom says, "Oh, I think he finally settled down." He starts petting him and says, "Yeah. You calm now? You calm now, Snoop Dogg?" Lincoln spits his drinks out and says, "Snoop Dogg? You can't name a puppy Snoop Dogg." Tom says, "I just did. He's like Snoopy, my favorite cartoon. And he's a dog. Snoop Dogg. I like it." Lincoln says, "You're so fucked." Tom says, "You're fucked." Lincoln says, "Yeah, well, you're double fucked." Tom says, "Yeah, well, you're triple fucked in the head." Lincoln says, "All right, well, rapper dog it is." Tom says, "Snoop Dogg. Just wait, you'll get used to it." Kezia then comes back and says, "Hey guys, forgot we had some canned goods in the back of the truck. I see the dog came back." Tom says, "Yup, Snoop Dogg is back." Kezia says, "That's kind of a shitty name. What would make you think of..." Tom looks at her, and she says, Yeah, that's so creative." Tom says, "Hey, when is Sydney getting back with more firewood? The shit's kinda dying on us here." Lincoln says, "I'll check in." And he picks up the walkie-talkie and says, "Sydney, this is Lincoln. If you hear this, please respond." And they don't hear a response. And Tom says, maybe her walkie died. But then, they hear a gunshot from a distance. They all get up in a panic, and Lincoln walkies. Sydney, what the hell was that? Sydney! But they don't hear a response, and Tom says, wherever that shot came from, it's close. Lincoln says, no, it was her. Kezia says, how do you know? Lincoln says, all my years of training. I learned about a lot, but one of the biggest ones is the sound of a pump-action shotgun. Kezia says, she wouldn't fire a shot unless it was absolutely necessary. They all look scared, but then we hear Sydney's voice come in over the walkie. Found a woman. Girl. Looks to be hurt. I'm bringing her back. Lincoln grabs his machete and says, tell me where you are. We'll come to you. Sydney says, no. Stay where you are. There's some bad people out here. They may be on our tail. We need to make sure they don't see us. Lincoln says, all right. You're okay? Sydney says, I'm fine. Just stay where you are. And Lincoln says, all right, be careful. Sydney says, we will, over and out. We see it starting to rain really bad as we see Sydney and this woman running through the woods. We see over 10 deadheads up the hill, and Sydney says, oh shit, get back. They both back up against the tree, and Sydney says, those deadheads hear us, we're both dead. Sydney looks behind the tree as we see 5 men walking through the woods. One of them pulls out a small dagger and kills all of the deadheads so quickly like they're nothing. We see one of these men with a bloody chainsaw, and they are marching in a pack. The girl is shaking in fear, and Sydney whispers, who are they? The girl says, people that want me dead. They find me, and it's over for you. Go. This isn't your fight. It's mine. And it's just a matter of time before they have my head. Sydney whispers, these people are hunting you. And if you can't already tell, I'm in this just as much as you are now. We see the men pass them by and go the opposite direction. Sydney sees their chance and says to the girl, let's go. But the girl is frozen and says, please, they're gonna find me. Sydney says, look, I know you're scared, but we don't go now, we won't be going anywhere. If it's not them, it'll be the dead. The woman looks terrified, but nods to say yes, and Sydney says, I'm right here. I'm not gonna let them get to you, okay? And the girl says, why are you doing this? Sydney says, because I've had to watch people die under my watch by the evil before. And even though I don't know who you are, I know a scared person when I see one. And the girl has a small smile on her face and says, name's Rivers. And Sydney says, okay, Rivers, now let's get you somewhere safe. And they head back up towards the bus yard. We see the men walking through the woods. One of them spots footprints that are leading up the hill. And there's 2 different sets of footprints confirming they are right on their trail. And they all, as a group, start heading in that direction. Back at the bus yard, we see Rivers is tied up, and she's inside of one of the empty buses. She looks to have been cleaned up, and we see Lincoln, Tom, Kezia, and Sydney all talking outside. As Rivers is listening from inside, we hear Sydney says, she was near death. If dehydration wasn't going to take her out, that man certainly would have. Lincoln asks, did you see any more of them while you were out there? Sydney says, there were more, and they were heading in the opposite direction. But God knows how long that's going to last. Lincoln looks at all 3 of them and says, well, let's find out. They open the door, and Rivers looks scared and says, Sydney? Lincoln slowly approaches her and says, it's all right. Sydney walks in, as well as Tom, and Lincoln says, Kezia, keep watch, would you mind? Kezia says, you got it, boss. Rivers is shaking, and Lincoln says, it's okay. I'm not here to hurt you, all right? Now, I'm gonna untie you, but I'm gonna ask you a question that I need answering to. Are we gonna have a problem here? Rivers says, no problem. Lincoln slowly removes the rope and says, now, My friend found you out there about to be murdered by a man, correct? Rivers looks scared and doesn't say anything, and Lincoln says, "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to cooperate with me here. Now, what is your involvement with these people? And I need to know, are my people here in danger? That's something I'm gonna need an answer to, and I'm sure you must understand given what you know about these men." Rivers says, "You should run while you have the chance." Lincoln says, "And why should we do that? What do they want to kill you for?" Rivers says, "Some mistakes that me and my people made, and most of us have paid the price." Tom says, "Most of you?" Rivers says, "My camp was attacked 3 nights ago. As far as I know, I'm the only survivor that made it out alive." She starts crying and says, "We should have left when we had the chance." Lincoln says, "So these people that my friend here shot, they're the ones that took out your camp?" Rivers nods to mean yes, and Lincoln says, "Who are they?" Rivers looks scared, and Sydney says, "It's okay." She looks at Lincoln and says, "They're a group of masked people that blend into the darkness. They hide their faces with these masks. And all I know is when they make a demand, you listen, or you're gonna have nothing, if your head is even attached by then." Tom says, "What kind of masks?" River says, "From what I can see, they go by the name the Apostles. And they don't stop until you're dead. And if they want to kill you, they're not gonna stop until you're dead." Tom says, "And why are they trying to kill you?" River starts breaking down, and Sydney notices she's shaking and says, "All right, guys, enough." Lincoln apologizes to Rivers and says, "I'm sorry. We'll let you get some food into your stomach first. You hungry?" Rivers nods, and Lincoln says, "Tom, go get her something to eat." Tom says, "Sure. What do you think, Rivers? Head or ass?" Lincoln says, "Oh, would you knock that off? Go get her some food. Come on, hurry." Lincoln says, "Sorry about that. You'll get used to it. So, your camp. Your friends. Do you know if anyone else survived?" Rivers says, "I don't. All those days out there being hunted by the evil that wanted my head. The only thing that kept me fighting was the possibility that..." Lincoln asks, "That what?" Rivers says, "That my father and my little brother might still be out there, somewhere." Lincoln says, "I'm sorry." Rivers says, "You should go. You and your friends. I'm a dead woman anyway. You don't deserve this, so go. Leave now while you have the chance." Rivers starts crying, and Lincoln walks up to her and says, "We are not turning back. I brought my people out here on this mission, and this mission is not finished. We may not get the supplies that we came out here to get, but who cares? We'll come out here some other time. And the only thing that I care about is making sure that every single one of those people that are out there right now can go home and sleep in their beds tonight." Lincoln then continues, "I'm not giving up, and I'm not letting you give up." And Rivers says, "Giving up on what?" Lincoln says, "Survival. That redhead guy out there with the beard, he and his friend found me in the woods. I had lost my family when everything fell. I was starving. I had nowhere to go. Just like you. And I tried to take everything that they had. But even after I tried to do something like that, Tom and his friend, Billy, saw the person I was beneath all this pain. And what they really saw was a person who didn't want to be on their own, deep down. And when they said they would come with me and help me look for my family, I wasn't sure why. Why me, you know? It took me years to figure out why, but I think I'm starting to get it." Rivers says, "What?" Lincoln says, "So I could help someone else do the same thing. Find their place. Find safety. Find a reason for survival. And most importantly, find their family." And she wipes her tears and says, "Thank you. But I don't want to be a burden." Lincoln looks at her and puts his hand on her shoulder and says, "The only burden will be whatever stops us from getting home." Rivers looks scared and hesitant, but she hugs him and says, "Thank you. Thank you so much. And Lincoln sees she's still shaking, and he says, "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Lincoln says, "Tom, we all packed up?" Tom says, "All ready, sir." "Don't tell me she's eating in my truck." Lincoln says, "Oh, for God's sakes. Tom, you cleaned your truck a month ago now. Let the girl eat." Tom says, "Oh, all right, bud." Fuck's sakes. Lincoln says, "Kezia, anything out there?" Kezia says, "We're in the clear, boss." Lincoln says, "All right." As we see them all get into the truck, Lincoln gets on his motorcycle, and they all ride out together to go home. And as we see them driving down the road, as we then see shadows of people watching them drive away from the forest. We see a deadhead walking onto the post-apocalyptic road. As we follow this deadhead, we see it walk by a sign on the side of the road, written on it, "Ziltramite, your road to survival's destination." And we then follow the deadhead into the woods. A few hours later, we see the deadhead walking in an open field. We then see someone kills it with a machete. We then see it's a teenage boy, and we see Catherine is with him and says, "You're getting better." And we see he has a hard time pulling the blade out of its skull. And we then see Dave walks up to Catherine, and she says, "Looks like he's getting the hang of it." And Dave says, "Yeah, maybe in a few days I'll take him hunting for gold." And Catherine chuckles and gives him a small punch on the arm. Dave says, "What?" Catherine says, "Come on, give the kid a break. He wanted to learn." And Dave says, "Yeah, but me? I got a whole lot better things to do around here." Catherine chuckles at this and says, "Huh, yeah, like what? Hanging at Tom's place drinking 10 beers each? Is that what you call being productive these days?" Dave says, "Hey, one of these days I'm gonna beat that motherfucker at Twister. The more beers that man drinks, the more likely I'll win one of these days." And Catherine says, "Well, it looks like you two will get back to it soon, because the kid looks like he's almost ready for runs now." Dave says, give it a few more days. One thing my father always told me, the one thing that's never overkill is proper training." And Catherine asks, "Where'd he get that from?" Dave says, "His trainer, Henry Stevens. Boy, he was a hard ass according to Dad, but he was a damn good soldier because of it. So it's never a bad thing for the kid to get proper experience out there. Not bad at all." We then see the kid still struggling to get the axe out of the deadhead's brain, and Dave and Catherine see him struggling with it, and Dave says, "Oh, for fuck's sakes." And they walk over to him, and Dave says, hold on. And the kid says, "I can't take it out. Can you do it?" Dave says, "Oh, sure, kid. I mean, we're all beginners and all. Are you fucking crazy? Get in there. All right, now, put your right foot on his fucking chest." And the kid does it and says, "Okay, yeah. What's next?" Dave says, "You want me to get a pen and paper and break it all down for you? Take that machete out of that motherfucker." The kid pulls and pulls, and it finally comes out of the deadhead's brain, but the blood goes all over the kid's face. The kid flinches at this and says, "Ugh, gross. Oh my God. Oh, that's gross." Dave says, "Nothing a shower can't fix. Go on, back to the horses. That's enough training for the day." The kid asks, "That was a good kill though, right?" Dave says, "Oh yeah, it was fucking incredible." And the kid says, "Thanks, Mr. Miller." And as he walks up the hill and walks far enough away from them, Dave says, "Ugh, horrible kill." Catherine says, "Oh, the worst I've ever seen." And then they both walk up the hill and back to their horses. We then see them walk to the horses that are tied up by the trees, and Catherine says, "Well, another day and not one bit of food out here." And Dave says, "We'll try again tomorrow." Catherine says, "Yeah, well, hopefully Lincoln and the others will come back with something." Dave says, "Oh, they're not going to be back for a few more days. I'll tell you what, I'll stay out for a bit. I'll tell you what, take the pussy home. Wipe his tears and get him ready for lessons tomorrow. I'll be back in a few hours. And Catherine says, you sure? We've only got another hour's worth of daylight at least, if we're lucky. And Dave says, don't worry about that. There's a reason I wear black, darling. I mean, hell, for a while there I was nothing but a silhouette. All I was a crazy maniac in the woods with no face. Nobody knew what I looked like, especially in the dark. And Catherine says, I can come with you. And Dave says, don't worry, babe, I'll be fine. Besides, the kid wants to go home. And Catherine says, okay, just be careful. She kisses him and Dave says, I will. And they then ride off and go their separate ways. As we transition to them riding over the hills, we see two of them riding on horseback, and Catherine says, you did good today, Zach. And Zach says, you really think so? Catherine says, oh yeah, you had a little trouble back there, but it's all just a little bit of practice. Zach says, I just want to be brave enough, you know? When they start running at me, I want to be able to shoot them like they're a fucking mosquito or something. She says, running. Zach says, we've been hearing these horror stories about deadheads that run faster than most people. It's something we all need to be prepared for. Thought you knew. Catherine says, no offense, kid, but I think they're fooling you. The dead don't run. And besides, those patrols are bored shitless. They'd say anything to take a day from boring to interesting. Zach says, maybe it's real. It's not any crazier than the dead walking around eating our brains in the first place. Humans evolve. So why wouldn't the dead? But maybe you're right. Maybe it's just bullshit. Oh, I hope it is. And they both ride back to Kingstonville together. We see Kingstonville, as we see people walking around, people working, and we then see Catherine walks into a restaurant where we see Luke and a woman named Jill. She says, sorry I'm late, had another lesson with Zach earlier today. Luke says, oh, how's he coming along? Catherine says, better, actually. I think a few more lessons we'll be ready to send him out on runs in no time. Jill says, glad to hear. Oh, by the way, there's a council meeting tomorrow at 8. Catherine says, oh, again? Jill says, tell me about it. Luke says, yeah, apparently some shit about a wall expansion. Catherine says, Lincoln's the head of the council though. He said we weren't doing the expansion for another month. Luke says, apparently Lincoln's word isn't as important as we thought. Catherine looks kind of on edge, and Luke says, frankly, I'm just happy we're able to keep this place going after. Catherine says, yeah, I know. Catherine says, wow, what are we ordering tonight? Luke says, I don't know. I hear there's a special on ribs. And we see the waitress walks up to them and says, are we ready to order? Catherine smiles, and we then cut to nightfall. We see all three of them walking out of the restaurant, and Catherine says, see you guys tomorrow. Luke says, yup, see you at 8. And we all see them go their separate ways. Catherine walks up to Haley and Lincoln's house and rings the doorbell. Haley opens up the door and says, hey. Rose runs up to Catherine, and Catherine says, hey baby, I missed you. She says to Haley, thanks for looking after her. Haley says, oh, it's no problem. They both had a fun play date today, right, Billy? Billy walks up to them, covered in chocolate, and Haley says, oh my god, sweetie, I told you not to touch those brownies. How many times do I need to say this to you? And little Billy says, I know, Mom, but Tom always told me that food is priority over everything. That and something called liquor. What is liquor, Mom? Haley looks at Catherine and says, I'm so sorry about this. Just go to the bathroom and clean yourself up. I'm gonna kill that guy. And Billy says, as he's being led to the bathroom, but Mom, what is liquor? Haley says, well, liquor is something you'll have when you're in your 30s. Now go on, get washed up. And Haley walks back up to Catherine and says, anyway, aside from that little fiasco, it's been a pretty good day. Catherine laughs and says, well, anyway, thanks for watching her. I'll see you tomorrow for the council meeting. Haley says, tomorrow at 8, right? Catherine says, yeah, want to talk about the next wall expansion, apparently. And Haley says, sounds kind of boring. Catherine says, you want to just stare at a wall the entire time? Haley says, you got it. Can't wait. And Catherine says, yup, can't contain my excitement. Anyway, nice to see you. And her and Rose go home as we see Haley shuts the door. As it cuts to night, we see Catherine sleeping in her bed. As we see flashes of her dream, in her dream, we see blood in the streets of Kingstonville. As we see a man with a knife in a black hoodie. We hear screams as we see Catherine's look of fear in her eyes. Kingstonville has been attacked. She wakes up from the dream in a panic. She walks out of her room and opens up Rose's bedroom door to find her fast asleep and looks relieved. She then puts on her jacket and goes outside to take a walk and clear her head. We see Catherine climb up the guard tower, where we see Roger and Julia on watch playing cards. Roger sees Catherine climb up and says, "Damn, Mrs. Miller, you don't look so good. Are you feeling okay?" Catherine says, "Oh yeah, I think I must have ate something earlier. It's just not sitting well with me, I guess." Roger says, "Oh, I've been there. Hey Jules, wasn't it last week Tom tried to make us this? Oh man, I'm forgetting what it is now." Julia says, "Oh, you talking about that beer chicken thing he made for us last week?" Roger says, "Yeah, that's it." Cat, listen, I swear, Tom invites me over for dinner, right? So me and Luke go over there and oh my god, the poor bastard tried to warn me too. So I went, I ate the shit, and oh my god, I ain't kidding you. Julia says, "Fucking rough one." Roger says, "Oh my god, I think I was on the toilet the whole night after that." Julia says, "No kidding. Ever since I've gone over the age of 21, my dad's been on this whole new alcohol-flavored food kick." Roger says, "Tell me about it." Catherine looks out into the distance from the top of the tower and says, "Well, I'm up. If you guys want to go to sleep, I got this." She pulls out the baby monitor and says, "Rose is fast asleep. Everything's fine." And Roger says, "You sure?" Catherine says, "Oh yeah. Go on, guys, get some rest." And Julia says, "I'm not tired." And Roger says, "Well, in that case, what do you say, kid?" As Roger stands up and says, "Want to go out on one of them 2 a.m. drives like we used to?" Julia says, "Hell yeah." We see the river flowing. As we pan over to the road, we're back with Lincoln as he drives by on his motorcycle. We then see Tom, Sydney, Kezia, Rivers, and sitting on her lap is Snoop Dogg. Tom says, "He seems to be quite fond of you already." "Yes, you are. Yeah, good boy." Sydney says, "Yeah, but Snoop Dogg? Really?" Tom says, "You got something better?" Sydney says, "No, just happy dogs can't smoke dope." And Tom says, And Sydney says, "Don't even think about it." We then see Lincoln in front of the truck driving his bike, and he sees it's starting to rain, but he thinks nothing of it. But then he sees lightning, and he pulls out his walkie and says, "Tom, we're gonna have to stop for a bit." Tom says, "Yeah, I see it. It's your call, buddy." Lincoln says, "We'll keep going. I think I saw a sign that said there's a gas station down this way. We'll stop there till this blows over." Tom says, "Copy that." As they keep riding, they approach a very long, covered bridge. As they're about to drive through, out of nowhere, crows come flying out of the bridge. Lincoln ducks and says, "Jesus!" He stops his bike and looks down this very long, covered bridge. He picks up his walkie and says to Tom on the walkie, "Keep your headlights on. I can't see shit." And Sydney says, "All right." Sydney taps Tom on the shoulder and says, "Okay, drive slow." As they slowly are driving through this covered bridge, we see them going very slow as Lincoln looks ahead and says, "All right, about halfway there." As they get closer to the end, Lincoln stops his bike in a panic as he sees the shadow of a man at the end of the bridge standing in the rain. Lincoln looks freaked out, and the man pulls out a knife. Lincoln gets off his bike, and Sydney says, "Who the hell is that?" Lincoln says, "Keep the truck running. Be ready." Sydney says, "Just one man?" Lincoln says, "There could be more." Lincoln looks at this man, and then he looks back at Tom and says, "Turn back." Sydney says, "They got us cut off." Lincoln looks back and sees these men all surrounding both sides of the bridge. Sydney says, "What do we do?" As Tom backs up the truck, Sydney looks through the rearview mirror and says, "Tom, stop." They look behind them and they see two other men standing on the other side of the bridge. Lincoln says, "What the hell's going on? Why'd you stop?" Lincoln then gets off his bike and looks at the man at the end of the bridge and pulls out his machete and says, "Fuck." They all light up their masks as all three of them start running towards them with knives. Lincoln takes a swipe at the one in front of him and he misses. The man slices Lincoln's arm and punches him and he falls to the ground. Tom and Sydney then run in and Tom comes in with his axe, but the man kicks Tom in the leg. Sydney then tries to interfere, but he slams her to the ground and she goes down. The man then punches Tom in the face and Tom punches back, but the man knocks Tom on his ass. Meanwhile, the other two see Rivers from a distance and they run up to her, but Kezia gets in the way and slices his throat open and one of them goes down. The other man tackles Kezia and starts beating her face in, and he hits her head hard on the wood floor. Rivers sees this and looks back and sees Lincoln, Tom, and Sydney on the floor as the men are about to finish everyone off. She sees inside the truck Sydney's shotgun in the back seat, and she reaches for it. Rivers cocks it and notices it's empty. She then searches through the truck and finds nothing. And as she's rushing, she finds 2 bullets left in the dash. As she loads the shotgun, and as Kezia is getting beat up by this guy, we then see Rivers shoots him in the head. As she looks back at the last guy who's about to kill Lincoln and says, "Oh, don't worry, I'm not leaving you out." And she blows the man's brains out. She then walks up to Sydney and helps her up and says, "This thing's got a kick." And Tom says to Lincoln, "Damn, I'm starting to really like this one." Lincoln slowly gets up and walks over to the dead man and says, "What the hell are these people?" Sydney says, "These aren't people." Lincoln says, "How many of them were out there?" Sydney says, "I saw 5. Lincoln rubs his head and says, "They've got people." Rivers gives Sydney her shotgun back and Rivers says, "We'll find them. As long as I'm out here, they're gonna keep coming." Kezia gets up with a bleeding face as she spits up a little bit of blood, and Lincoln says, "You good?" Kezia says, "I'm fine." Tom says, "We need to go." Sydney says, "Yeah, but where?" Lincoln says, "Someplace with a lock." Lincoln picks up his machete and says, "Let's get the fuck out of here." As they get into the truck, Lincoln says, "We gotta get the hell out of here and get out of this storm. Let's get to this gas station immediately. It's not that far from here." As they all drive out of this covered bridge and try to find somewhere safe. We then cut to Roger and Julia as we see them riding the roads late at night. Roger, who's driving, passes her a cigarette and she says, "I'm good." Roger says, "All right. Sun'll be up soon." Julia says, "Hopefully my dad will be back in a few days." Roger asks, "Why didn't you go with him?" Julia says, "I'm needed back home." Roger says, "Planting vegetables and reading 50 Shades of Grey 50 times over?" Julia says, "I just want to help." Roger says, "And you have. But you're good out here, and I know you miss it. Facing the dead? You told me a few years back that you had to be out here. It was like your therapy, so you said." "What changed?" Julia says, "It hasn't changed. It's just, after what happened last year." Roger says, "That wasn't your fault." Julia says, "Yeah, that's what my dad told me. But that's what dads are supposed to say, right?" Roger says, "Trust me, Jules. Tom is too honest for his own good. I don't think I've seen that man tell one lie." Julia says, "All I know is that what we went through last year, we can't let that happen again." Roger says, "We went through something that we should have been prepared for. But after all the bad that we went through, I always feel like there's a reason why it happened. And I think this time, it's trusting people. It isn't as easy as we think it is." Julia says, "No shit." Roger says, "Well, I don't know much about this undead world these days, but It's just so damn unpredictable. But the one thing I do know is that anybody that survived this long either has to be seriously organized or completely out of their minds. Well, actually, maybe a little bit of both. Julia kind of laughs a bit, and Roger says, "No, seriously though, there's some crazy motherfuckers out here." He continues to say, "Kid, there's some things you're just gonna miss growing up in this fucked up world. But you've adapted well for your age." Julia smiles and says, "Actually, this has probably been the best time of my life." Roger looks like he feels sorry for her, and she says, "My mom, she was never leading me down the right path. But now, somehow through all of this, I feel like I matter finally in my life." Roger puts his arm around her and he says, "Come here, kid." And he says, "Well, I'd say things are starting to get a lot better." Roger then slams the brakes as they stop the truck. They see a herd of over 1,000 deadheads at the end of the road. As we zoom out, the dead stop walking. They all slowly turn their heads as they see the truck from a distance. All the dead start charging towards the truck. Roger says, "Oh, fuck. Julia says, "Turn around!" Roger, in a panic, tries to wheel the truck around. They turn it around and the truck goes into the ditch. As they're trying to get away, Julia says, "They're coming!" The truck then gets stuck in the ditch. Julia says, Ford it! Roger says, come on. The dead then run up and start banging on the truck. Roger says, "Fuck. All right, I'm going to give it all I got. Hold on tight." He backs the truck up into the crowd of the dead, and the blood splatters all over the truck. Then Roger Fords it, and they drive away as fast as they can. But as Julia is looking back, over 1,000 deadheads are following the truck from behind them, and they're running towards the truck. Roger looks freaked out and says, "Holy shit, those are runners." Julia says, "Have you ever seen that before?" Roger says, "I thought I did, but Jesus Christ." Julia says, "Speed it up. We gotta beat this herd before it gets home." Roger then picks up his walkie. We then see Catherine sitting on the guard tower smoking a cigarette. As she's calmly listening in on Rose fast asleep, she then hears over the walkie, "Mrs. Miller, if you hear me, please respond. I repeat, if you hear me, please respond." Catherine picks it up and says, "I'm here, Roger. How's the ride going?" We cut to Roger in the truck saying, "Oh yeah, it's a fucking blast. So much of a blast that it looks like we're bringing thousands of deadheads back home as a present." Catherine says, "Oh, no. Okay, it's okay. We've handled herds before. We'll handle it in the morning. Just come on home." Roger says, "No, we have to do this tonight. You know those rumors we've been hearing about the runners?" Catherine says, "Oh no." Roger says, "Well, it's more than just a few on their way. It's a whole goddamn army." And Catherine looks freaked out, and Roger says, "We've got about 10 minutes left. They're right on our tail. I need you to sound the alarm and warn everybody by the time we're back. Get all the kids to the top of the tower on Queen Street and keep them there. Make sure to put them on the top floor where they can't get to them, okay?" Catherine says, Okay. Be safe." Roger says, "We're on our way. Over and out." And Roger and Julia look so scared as the dead are still running after the truck. We see Catherine runs into the building and pulls a few buttons, and then the emergency alarm goes off as everyone runs out of their houses. Haley runs out with Billy and says, "Catherine, what the hell is going on?" Catherine is in the guard tower holding a shotgun and says, "Over 1,000 deadheads are coming, and they're all runners. They're heading this way." Haley says, "Runners?" Catherine says, "Roger and Julia are on their way back. They told me to get the kids to safety. He said the tower was the best bet." Haley says, Okay. Billy says, "Mama, I don't want to go in the tower without you." Haley says, "Look, I know you're scared, baby, but I need to help defend this place, okay? I have to defend this place, okay? I need you to be brave." Billy starts crying and says, "Please, Mom, don't go. Please don't go, Mom." Haley says, "Baby, I know you can do this, okay? You're strong. I know you are. I'll be back when this is done, okay? That's a promise. I promise you, I will get you out of here." Billy looks scared, and then she tells one of the girls named Jill, "I need you to get these children to the top of the tower and keep them protected at all times, okay?" And Jill says, "You got it, boss." And as the families go with Jill down the road, once it's just her, Luke, Miles, Amelia, and the rest of the men?
Haley says, I need 2 guards at guard post 1, 2 guards at guard post 2, Catherine is guard post 3. Laura, Tim, get to the armory. Get those explosives we found on that run last month. Bring them out. Richard, Hill, I need you guys to set up that cable. Get into position in case of emergency, like Lincoln planned. Amelia, Miles, Luke, you're with me. Now we don't have much time. Let's go!
Back with Lincoln's group. Lincoln and the others pull into a post-apocalyptic gas station. As they all get out of the truck, Lincoln says, All right, Tom, Kezia, go in and search the place. Sydney, Rivers, you're out here with me on guard. Let's be sure there's no more surprises out here, shall we? Tom and Kezia enter the gas station, and we see Lincoln, Sydney, and Rivers standing outside. Rivers says to Lincoln, I gotta ask, the way you talk, the way you lead, what did you do before all this? Lincoln says, prison guard. Rivers says, well, I guess you've been ordering people around for a long time then. Lincoln says, no, not really. My wife, she's got the leadership qualities. She's always thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone. But me? He chuckles and says, I'm just the first man they saw. Rivers says, well, your people are lucky. It's rare that the first man they see is the perfect leader. But then, they hear a loud noise coming from inside the gas station. Lincoln tells Rivers, stay out here. Lincoln and Sydney run in. We then see 2 men and a girl holding a rifle at Kezia's head, and another man has Tom held at knife point and he says, who the hell are you? Are you one of them? Huh? You here to kill us too? Is that it? And Tom says, hey, we didn't want any trouble, we thought it was empty. The woman says, bullshit. You people been out here killing us one by one, and we're not gonna let you do more damage than you've already done. The man says, we can't trust them. Vivian, blow the girl's head off. Tom starts fighting back and says, don't you fucking touch her, you son of a bitch. The man says, oh, don't worry, big guy. You just wait your turn. Lincoln then comes in and takes out his machete and says, I believe the policy is to let the new arrivals get first dibs. He holds his machete towards them and says, what do you think, Sid? Let's paint this room red and see what these people are made of. As they all get ready to kill each other, Rivers comes in and says, Nathan? Nathan drops the knife, and Vivian and the 2 others lower their weapons, and they all walk up to Rivers and hug her. Nathan says, oh my God, how are you alive? Rivers says, I've been asking myself the same question. Did you see my brother? My dad? Vivian says, sorry, girlfriend. We're all that's left as far as we know. Lincoln and Sydney lower their weapons, and Rivers says, guys, it's okay. This is Lincoln West, and these are some of his people. They're with me. Nathan says, we can trust him? Rivers says, they're why I survived it all. I'd be dead if it wasn't for them. And Nathan says, well, any friend of Rivers is a friend of mine, so I apologize. However, I'm afraid we got a bigger problem on our hands here. He shows everyone the stab wound that he has in his leg, and he says, one of these freaks in the mask threw a knife at me. One of them threw one at Vivian over there. Luckily they missed, but the bastards got me, right in the leg. Ain't that pleasant? Lincoln says, we can patch you up. We've got medical supplies back at our community. We can get you fixed up there. Nathan says, thanks, but you just threatened to paint this room red with my insides. Lincoln laughs and says, well, I'm glad it didn't go down that way. It would have been a shame for you. We see Haley on her deck getting suited up, and Luke and Amelia come out of the house, and Amelia says, the family's made it to the top of the tower. Haley loads her gun and says, good. Amelia says, here. She pulls out a bottle of liquor, and she says, if this is our last night, let's make the best of it. Haley takes a swig and hands it to Luke, and Luke takes a drink also, and he says, you think we're ready? Haley says, we're as ready as we can be. Amelia says, Laura said the explosives are in place. You sure this'll work? Once those explosives go off, that gate's likely going to be coming down. Haley says, it doesn't matter. If these runners are as dangerous as they sound, the gates are going to fall whether we want it to or not. Luke says, the wall comes down, it's over. Haley says, the wall wants to fall? Let it fall. We can fix the wall in time. The wall can go down, but we can't. So let's get ready. Luke and Amelia both look at Haley, and she takes the last swig of booze and says, because we're going to be up all night. As we see everyone is getting packed up, Tom says, "Hold on to your tits, bros and sisses. The truck's almost out of fuel. I gotta fill up a sec." Nathan says, "Does he always talk like a Newfoundlander?" River says, "No shit. You'll get used to it." We see Lincoln gets on his motorcycle, and Sydney walks up to him and says, "The truck doesn't have enough room for all of us, boss. Looks like I'm riding the bike with you." Lincoln says, "All right." And he passes her a helmet, and she chuckles and says, "That for you?" Lincoln says, "Here, take it." Sydney says, "You don't have one." Lincoln says, "Yes, but I am the motorcycle expert, okay? You see, the importance of riding a motorcycle is safety, first of all. Now, at the time I've learned a lot," as Sydney says, "Yeah, sounds great. Put that crap away." Lincoln puts the helmet away and says, "All right, hang on tight." Sydney says, "Yep, you just worry about steering." Vivian walks up to one of her friends that looks a little scared, and she says, "Hey, you all right?" The guy says, "It's just my brothers. My mom. I miss them so much." We then hear in the background Tom says, "Ah, I spilled gas on my pants. I didn't know it was diesel." Nathan says, "Here, let me do it." Vivian looks at her friend, and she puts her hand on his shoulder and she says, "Listen, we didn't make it here for nothing. Because I still believe we've got things left to do. And they wouldn't want us to give up. We found Rivers. That's gotta mean something. Come on, don't tell me you're giving up on me now." Her friend says, "I'll never give up." Her friend is then shot in the eye socket with an arrow, and Vivian looks shocked, and his friend is still talking and says, "I'll never give up. I'll never give up. I'll never give. I'll never." And he falls to his death. Vivian looks back at everyone else and says, "Run!" Several arrows are then fired. One of them hits Tom right in the shoulder. Lincoln quickly grabs him, and Sydney grabs Snoop Dogg as they all take everyone else and run into the woods. Lincoln looks back and sees the dead man bleeding out and says, "Go! Go!"